おはようございます。間に合いました。大丈夫ですか。はい。では定刻になりましたので始めます。グローバルビジネスフォーラムによる日本のグランドデザイン策定を行う融合型実践教育ということで、今回第4回目のフォーラムということになります。今日の4回目、それから2月の第5回目、それから3月のシンポジウムという形で最終報告をまとめて提言ということです。今日のアナウンスを申し上げますと、このような形になっております。まず特別講演、10時から11時15分で、ビカッシュ・ランジャンさんですね。Dr. Vikash Ranjan will make a presentation on India-China relationship. That is in English. So later I will introduce him to you.それから第2番目が農業ということで、持続型社会教育、実践型農業教育ということで、まず農林水産省の山口康講師にご講演をいただきまして、でその次に株式会社マルタの代表取締役の鶴田講師に講演をいただきます。それからこの農業のプロジェクトを行っているグループリーダーから中間報告をしていただきます。で、昼休みを挟みまして午後2時ぐらいから始めるのが持続型社会教育、高齢者の医療・介護・生活ということです。で、ここではお二人の外部講師をお招きしておりまして、一人は筒井孝子講師先生で、厚生労働省の中で介護の制度設計、政策設計を行っているという方です。それからもう一方は本間育子先生で NPO 法人特養法務を良くする市民の会理事長ということで、福祉施設における第三者評価を積極的に進められている代表的な方で、お二人のですね、介護制度に関する公的な制度設計と、それから民間からの評価というお二人の方をお招きしてお話をいただきます。で、その後グループからグループが行っている研究に関してのご報告をいただきます。という形で、お手元には膨大な資料をお渡ししておりますし、国際関係、農業、介護という形で多岐にわたる論点がありまして長丁場になりますけれども、ディスカッションの部分を多くして議論を進めていこうというふうに考えていますので、皆さんぜひ積極的にご参加ください。で、今回もいろんな方がいらっしゃってますけども、とりわけ KBS の OB の方が多くなっておりますので、後ほど少し紹介の時間を設けまして話を進めていきます。So, Professor Muranoshi and could you introduce and in charge of the discussions? Okay.
I'll just make a brief introduction. Dr. Vikash Ranjan is a research fellow at Vivekanand International Foundation from India. And he is one of the members of the project of India-Japan-China relations. He used to be a fellow at the KU University before, at the business school. No, not the business school, KU University. Okay, his topic is India-China relations scope for Japan. Please.
So, just some kind of mistake in the introduction, so could you correct?
皆さんおはようございます。インドから来たビカスです。私はすぐ2年前ぐらいに日本に文部省政府の奨学金で中央大学と東京外国語大学に勉強してインド帰った。今、ビベカナインターナショナルファウンデーションにリサーチフェローぐらい働いています。どうぞよろしくお願いします。Today, my presentation would be in English. I hope, I know it will be difficult over here for people, some other people, but I'll try to go very slow so that everybody can understand. And since I will use the PowerPoint presentation, then I think most of you will get.
Okay, so the first is 45 minutes or so, the presentation, and could you accept a question in between?
Yeah.
And later the 15 minutes discussion also.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. And just allow.
India-China relations scope for Japan. The growth patterns of the world economy are being altered in tune with the two most populous and dynamic economies of India and China. Obviously, India to a much lesser extent that of China. But in my presentation, I will try to prove that India provides a much better opportunity over the long run than China. Though both India and Japan have large trade volumes with China, there are problems inherent in the relationship. That's obvious by the different cases which has happened in the region from time to time. And because of that, everybody can guess that though trade is a major effect, trade is a major aspect, but still there are some other aspects which may be more important than trades. And even in trade terms, India provides a better opportunity in the long run. Because in security context, China's increasing assertiveness is a major concern for both the countries. Like recent happenings in the South China Sea on the Senkaku Daewoo Island. In India, if you talk about POK, Pakistan occupied Kashmir, Arunachal, you will find that they just started issuing stupid visa to people from these regions, claiming that they are not part of India or it's a disputed territory, those sort of things. Therefore, why India and Japan should come together? The complementary nature of Indian and Japanese economies and their converging political and security interests. If you see, I'll go into economic aspects in later. And then again, what I was telling you, like China is increasing assertiveness in the South China Sea, and it's increasing cooperation with Pakistan and Myanmar for in India's context. Both the countries feel very realistic threat which can accrue from North Korea or Pakistan. Both are nuclear power countries and both are being supported by China. That makes it again a common country of concern, because the question arises why all the failing countries of the world, be it Iran, Myanmar, Pakistan, North Korea, all are being supported by China. Because obviously there must be some problem somewhere. Just I was talking about a strength of India economy, that it provides a better opportunity for. Then India's strength lies in like its emerging buoyant economy, young and expanding population, lower cost of production, large market. What India needs right now is social and economic infrastructures, financial resources and technology so that it can build upon. And since in India not much development had taken place, that's why when you start from a very lower scale, there is huge scope for investments in each and every sector, whichever sector you may think. Japan's strength is its financial resources, technological prowess, and manufacturing skills. All the three things needed by India. But Japan's need to look for new areas for investments and markets in the present context because of its strengthening yen in the international market, because obviously its export competitiveness has been affected. And with the further strengthening of yen, the cost of production in Japan is also going to increase, which also makes it prudent to invest somewhere in countries which are much cheaper. Then shrinking workforce, mounting public debt in Japan, prospects of a prolonged deflation, and those sort of things, because of which Japan needs to invest overseas. Then why to choose India over China? Because obviously both India and China have very large trade volumes with China, and I know most of the people over here would disagree with me because they will think that obviously China provides a much better opportunity, at least in the short term. But I will try to argue that no, in the long term, India provides a much better opportunity than China. Because the first thing is that there is no historical question between India and China. So that's why the image of Japan in India is, what you say, much, much better than obviously if you see but on the other side, if you go by the trade volumes, Japan has very great trade volume with China, India has very great trade volume with China. But still, the nature of their trade differs. Like in India, the problem is that it's mostly primary resources which are being exported. And most of these trades are even in China's favor. And that too, China has come out with policy of something like to invest in primary resources in the next 30 years or so. So that's why it will be difficult for India to have better trade balance with China in the long run. And again, complementary resources of India and Japan, as I told before. India is a democratic country, like it happened in the case of Senkaku Daioh Island, that though Chinese government did not say anything, but obviously they stopped the export of rare earth materials to Japan, which affected Japanese company. Those sort of things can never happen in India because it's a democratic country and there is no some sort. Obviously, that question in itself is unthinkable in India. And even by going by the growth prospects, according to the Morgan Stanley research, China's growth, India would take China's growth rate by 2013 and is expected to be notably ahead by 2015 onwards. That in itself shows a huge opportunity which India provides. And second thing, in China, the working population ratio is going to decline from 2015 onwards. So because of those things, India provides a much better choice. And otherwise, even in China, somewhere some sort of saturation has come. Because of that, labor cost in China has been increasing. It has not been remained stagnant. So it's not very profitable to invest in China now, because earlier there was a thinking that if you are not in China, you are not anywhere on this earth, because that was supposed to be the major manufacturing hub of the world. But now I don't think so that would remain further long. Obviously, going by the labor cost, going by the aging population, even going by the way the nation is going to be treated in the long run, maybe it becomes more assertive. All the countries may become against it in the long run. So that sort of thing will give much, obviously, for those in those sort of scenarios, people have to look out for other opportunities in other places. And again, India provides like I said, since India has started from a very low base, so India still needs to develop its 80% of infrastructure, which it needs by 2030. So that provides a huge scope for investment. Because in the 12th five-year plan, because in India, the planning is being done on 5-year basis, like what India should do in 5-year plan. Then for 12th five-year plan from 2012 to 2017, India has targeted around 1 trillion investment in the infrastructure sectors. But the problem is that till now, the investment in infrastructure sectors had been just of the order of 8 to 10%, including both debt and equity. But there is a scope for 30% of investments in the infrastructure sectors in India by private companies or foreign companies. Moreover, India provides a better opportunity for Japanese companies in the sense that since Japan procures all its oil from the Middle East region, and India is nearer to Middle East, that lowers its transportation costs and everything. And second thing, if you produce in China or in Japan and other places, you again look for market. And so, India provides a ready-made market. Obviously, that even saves lots of money and those sort of. Obviously, in India, there are lots of needs for infrastructure in each and every sector. But here, I'll just go for energy, and that too for particular nuclear energy in very short. Because obviously, unconventional energy sources would be one of the thing which India is looking at, mostly solar and those sort of things, nuclear energy now, and even with shale gas and other things which it signed with the US. But nuclear energy cooperation between India and Japan has been a bit controversial because of the obviously perceptual differences between the two countries. But obviously, India would like to partner Japan on the peaceful usage of nuclear energy. And in my view, it's not in Japan's or India interest even to not to sign any sort, not to sign civil nuclear deal between the two countries, because obviously Japan would not like to miss out on the huge business opportunities which it provides. And since all the world over, most of the countries have signed some sort of nuclear deal with India, and they have already entered into backed many contracts. So obviously Japan has already been lagged behind. Second thing is that all the US and major US and Korean, French companies which have backed contracts in India to build nuclear projects and other things, there is some sort of a stake of Japan, because either owned by Japan or partly owned by Japan. And since Japan has like restriction to transfer military and other technology related things to other countries since 1976, it will not be possible for these companies to use Japanese technologies in India. So because of that, even they may pressure Japan, and even in Japan's domestic companies like Hitachi and Toshiba see huge business potential from Indo-US nuclear civil deal, and they want to uh, uh, they want to Indian or Japanese government to enter into some sort of nuclear deal so that they can go ahead. Like what I was saying, South Korea has shown Japanese companies in the Indian market, especially in the electronics. Japanese companies would not like to lose to the South Korean companies in the India's power generation market, as India's Korea Nuclear Corporation is also on the card. So obviously, if Japan goes for nuclear cooperation or not, or India may lose some of the technology, but obviously Japan would lose a major business opportunity over there. And I think whatever the hiccups between India and Japan to sign the deal is not the end goal between India and Japan, like nuclear non-proliferation or total elimination of nuclear weapons from the globe, because these are being shared by India even. India has been traditionally been very supportive and a strongly advocate of nuclear non-proliferation and total elimination of nuclear weapons, but only going by its security challenges it faces. Like it is surrounded by two major nuclear powers, and one may be upcoming. Like Pakistan is there already, China is there already. On the eastern side, maybe Myanmar. China, I have heard that China is supporting Myanmar in building some sort of nuclear project or something like that. So because of that, India has lots of issues to deal with. It cannot remain isolated in the midst of all these countries, and that too when most of these countries are so unstable, be it Pakistan, be it Afghanistan, be it Sri Lanka, or be it Myanmar, Bangladesh, whichever country you name, most of them, Nepal, all of them are unstable countries. So in the midst of that, obviously, India had some sort of need to have some sort of say that it has some sort of nuclear deal, so that not many countries or many people would have taken it lightly, those sort of things that may give it some sort of security security assurance. So that's why I think that only India, Japan, it's only the end goal for the nuclear thing is almost, I think both of them feel the same way, but only thing that their means to that end differs, because Japan does not face those sort of security challenges as India faces, right? Apart from these security issues, those sort of issues, there are security issues between where India and Japan can cooperate, and though they are cooperating to some extent, because obviously they need to secure the sea lanes of communication in the Indian Ocean. In that regard, they are already doing something, some sort of coordinated work in the Gulf of Aden because of the piracy and other things. Obviously, there are about 40 countries which are over there, but India and Japan are even coordinating over there. And to secure the Indian Ocean, Malacca Strait, Lombok Strait is necessary for both India and Japan's interest, but at least Malacca Strait and others from Japan's interest, because of its all its oil comes from those regions itself. And apart from that, obviously, India and Japan needs to contain China to some extent, because earlier there was a perception that China's rise would be very peaceful and it would not lead to its more aggressive behavior in the long run. But going by the present trend, it seems very unlikely that China would remain China would uh, rise very peacefully, because obviously it would, going by the, that's true for, I think, not only for China, that's true for the beginning, at least in each and any country of the world would have gone the same way. Had they gone economically superior from a very lower stage, obviously that would lead to nationalistic fervor in their own countries. That would lead it to its more assertiveness in the long run. Okay, because just to show that okay, they are something now, because that's the general attitude of a common person, and that, because of that, I think China is doing the same way. But obviously, that's not good for India or Japan's interest. Obviously, that's different thing. But it will go on doing that thing. I don't think that there would be any reduction in sort of China's assertiveness. Maybe it would be more subtle, but obviously, because as the way it's going around securing resources and building bases and procuring everything, whatever it needs, is like China is going all the way out to have some sort of hegemony in the Asia Pacific region, to make some sort of hegemony in the Asia Pacific region. That's not good from either India's or Japan's perspective. Because in India case, though, it's particularly very difficult for India, because as China has built a string of bases around India in each and every country, if you see, like be it Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Maldives, Pakistan, obviously it's there. So obviously it's become so difficult, it will become so difficult for India to operate, because it's obviously, it may say that it's just for port basis of, you need one port, two port, you do not need at each and every port, so that you encircle in the way that it's, because the way it has encircled, it's completely strategic, that if something happens, it can just contain India, those sort of. So because of that, and second thing, China is not an Indian Ocean power, but now it has become an Indian Ocean power. By having these bases, it has direct access to the Middle East through its Gwadar port. It has direct access to complete Indian Ocean through its Sri Lanka, Myanmar, whatever. So that's why it has become an Indian Ocean power. So that's why its extent has, its reach has extended from South China Sea and East Asian Sea to complete Indian Ocean to the Middle East region. So because of that, obviously, it's like, as Muranishi Sensei was saying, that we should do some sort of China's neighbors network sort of thing. We should apply that. We should have some sort of nexus between the countries surrounding China, so that we can contain China to some extent. Because obviously its development would be difficult. But obviously how it would materialize, that's even difficult to judge at this stage, because obviously, as I was talking to Anegawa Sensei, he said, because you may make some sort of collective, we may take some sort of collective effort, but obviously China then will go for building bilateral relationship with each country, so that it can break the alliance. So those sort of things can happen, and that would, how those nitty-gritty would be sorted out in the future, that's difficult to judge. But still, going by vaguely, at least theoretically, I think that there should be some sort of alliance, Chinese neighbors network sort of thing, as Professor Muranishi said, and that to contain China in some way or the other. Therefore, India and Japan's failure to involve each other let them lose significant opportunities to be benefited by each other in both economic and strategic affairs. However, the complementary nature of Indian and Japanese economy and their converging security and political interests make them natural allies with common causes and therefore mandatory partners in the long run. Thank you so much.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much, Vikash. I think taking advantage of my position as the leader of the group leader of the India and Japan China project, I'm going to ask one question, I think, and then I ask the audience to ask questions too. I would say, first of all, that you said that India and Japan can be natural allies because there is no historical difficulties, whereas India and China had border disputes, and they also fought war before. And Japan and China also fought big wars before and had historical problems. My question is, in what sense and how is it probable that India and China make some kind of settlements about the historical issues in the past, and so that the two countries can also be somewhat not friends, but kind of business partners in the long run. It seems to me, in my personal view, it is very difficult for China and India, not only because of the small wars, but also because of the border disputes and by everything, because of the fact that the countries had land borders. How about that?
I think it's at least in the present condition, it's difficult to fathom because border dispute is one of the things which India or China may not sort out or would not like to sort out in the short term at least. Because the difficulty over there is that border issue has become strategically important from China's perception, in the sense that since it has built Karakoram Highway, Karakoram Railway Line in the POK, Pakistan Occupied Kashmir, it has gained access to the Gwadar port to its links with the Central Asian region or the Indian Ocean, Middle East and all those sort of region. It would never like to lose that thing. And for any India or China settlement, obviously that niche, obviously India would not like that issue to be, like Indian territories to be given to China. And second thing, the second issue is of Taiwan in India. Obviously, India cannot give Taiwan because Taiwan has been always part of India. But since giving Taiwan would also means that China accepts Tibet as in some sort of implicit sense, because 1914 agreement between UK, Tibet and China. So because of that, China would have to accept that Tibet was independent at some point of time. That would not like to do, because that would obviously affect its domestic politics. And second thing is, Taiwan has been historically very anti-Chinese. There have been resistance to Chinese occupation, very strong resistance to Chinese occupation. So because of that, obviously, its Taiwan question is very difficult to settle. And even going by the whatever boundary talks have been going on between India and China, it seems difficult because though both the sides decided that they would sort out boundary dispute in some stipulated framework of time, but that became and they came out with political parameters and guiding principles for that purpose. But after the 12th round of talks, China do not want to go beyond, and it extended boundary talks to include other talks like on global issues, on other bilateral issues, and those sort of things. So obviously, when it was from the beginning of boundary talks, why other issues should be incorporated in between? So that shows that it's non-seriousness, that it does not want to solve the issue, and it thought that it's just going down and down and talking. And obviously, I don't think that it will give away its strategic leverage in Pakistan occupied Kashmir, whatever Indian government or others may say, because obviously that would be too difficult for China again. And that India would never like.
Okay, okay. So in other words, you think that, first of all, the border dispute is very difficult to solve to the satisfaction of India,
India. Both
before
Both
Pakistan and China. And besides that, you say that the string of pearl strategy of China means that the China is structuring its policy towards South Asia in the way that permanent friendship between China and then India is very, very difficult.
Very difficult,
okay.
I think.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Go ahead.
Just two background questions. It's my ignorance of this, the economies and of India. What is the population growth of India? China has tried to contain their population growth, but is India still growing?
Yeah, India is still growing, and I think there is no policy in India to control the population growth. Though there have been some policy, but obviously, going by the overall population growth, it does not seem the case.
Do you know approximate percentage growth?
I think 2.1 or something like that, and it's like at least it's like 1.2 billion now. I think by 2015, India is going to overtake China.
By 2015?
2050 or so.
50. Okay.
Even more before that, because China adopted one China policy and it's giving result to some extent.
Okay.
But
And my next question is, I'm not sure if you probably don't have a slide handy, but in, say, the past 10 years, what has been the economic growth rate comparison? I know China has maintained almost double-digit growth over 10 years. How about India?
India has maintained like 7 to 8% growth on an average in the last decade. And even India-China trade have been booming very fast.
Right.
Obviously, I'm here talking about India-Japan trade, but I'm talking about the potential. I'm not talking about what's there. Because in reality, if you go, then India-China trade is 4 to 5 times of India-Japan trade.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, there may be some problems. But obviously, as I said before that, obviously, since India is mostly exporting primary resources to China, it's not in India's interest to go for, because obviously even the trade balance is not in India's favor. Mm-hmm. And going by the policy China has adopted, that it would want to produce its basic primary resources, like it has invested 30 billion yuan to procure its own primary resources. Obviously, it would be difficult for India to export more primary resources to China even by the primary resources standard. It's not in India's interest.
My final comment and half question is, your assertion is Japan should increase ties with India for the reasons that you proposed, but ultimately, don't you think the ultimate answer is China is not going to go away and people are not going to cut off? But it's a very smart, as a risk management, no matter what else is happening, even if India is less attractive, which over time you say it will become more attractive, but even if it's less attractive, simply as a risk management strategy,
that's
spreading their resources to India is much smart.
I'm saying my main argument is, obviously, I don't believe that obviously all the Japanese companies or foreign companies will go and withdraw their resources from China or invest in India. That's not going to happen. And it's not feasible even. But obviously, once you start having hedges in other countries like India, so obviously maybe you have 230 billion trade between India and Japan now. China and Japan now, and maybe if you start investing in India like 100 million or so obviously you have some sort of hedge. Maybe it's half. I am not talking in the comparative terms that obviously it should be greater than China or the investment should be higher than China or more than China, but obviously I'm saying that till now the relations have been so low that it's not comparable to China. So somewhere if you start building the hedge, then even if you have some problems in China, at least you have some resources in some other countries. And that too in India provides a major opportunity because it's a young population and China has like growing population. Its labor cost has increased. India's labor cost remains as it is. You have like Middle East region more closer to India than China. It's like it's easier to procure the oil from the Middle East to India than to China. So that's why I think India makes a more sensible.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Someone else? Go ahead.
Thank you for giving us nice lectures. Yeah. And I almost agree to your opinion or understanding about the relation between Japan and India. Okay? But however, I have some concern about the mentality of the Indian peoples. Okay?
That I know.
Now, I have a friend at IIT. Now, according to information from them, okay, most of the majority of the Indian people prefer to collaborate with China rather than Japan in terms of business.
No, I don't think so, Sensei.
You don't think so?
At least on that account, I don't think so. Because China does not have a good image in India. Because even if you go by India's things what have been working on, so obviously they are concerned about Chinese activities in each and every sector. They do not trust China. That's why they do not allow Chinese investment in major crucial infrastructure sectors. That's not the case with Japan.
Oh, is that
Japan
right?
has a very good image, and obviously that's why people, Indian government and others would allow Japan in crucial infrastructure sectors where it will never ever allow China.
But however, that is a nice university, like IIT or other university, okay? Student that want to study the Mandarins, as well as the English, of course, okay? Not Japanese, okay? And from that viewpoint, I wonder, okay, the young generation of India, okay, seem to accept the current situation between India and China, even though some dispute exists. That's my concern.
I think, Sensei, whatever you are asking is about the students. I think students would go wherever they will see an opportunity and for a job or the growth. And currently, since China is providing that, I'm not saying that. That's what I'm saying. Japan has not provided that. Had Japan provided that, they would have learned Japanese. Because had Japanese company been started taking them and those sort of, they would have started learning Japanese. Since Japan has not done that till now. So obviously, since Chinese company are doing that, they have started learning Mandarin.
I see. Could you tell us that, the mentality of the majority of India about Japan?
I think it's a much fair image. That's what I'm
like
saying.
neutral?
No, it's not neutral. I think it's a very fair
You think
image.
they're positive?
I think I'm talking about common people. I'm not talking about political people and other governments and other things. But I think even by the government standard, if you see, I think Prime Minister Manmohan Singh is much in favor with increasing relations with Japan, and which concerns China. China does not like to wants India, Japan to have good relations.
While China is growing, of course, India needs some securities, as he mentioned. Okay? But once the China they exceeds the U.S. in terms of economy, in terms of the army capabilities, I suppose India have to take other strategy, like to collaborate with the U.S. more than
No, I
with
think
Japan.
in that context, India is self-sufficient to look after its own interest. At least as far as China is concerned, we have been there like for 2,000, 3,000 years. There has been just one war, that too very recently. But still, and as to the question of China taking beyond, China development overtaking US and its interest, global security interest being all over the globe. But I don't think personally it's accepting a defeat before the situation has arisen. I think most of the people in the world are doing this just the same. They have given away to China that, okay, China is going to become the major world power. China has become a major economic power, military power, everything. I think till the last moment has not come, you have not lost a game.
Thank you very much.
and still, and so many domestic problems engulf China. What's the guarantee that its growth rate would remain the same or it will go the same way? And at least US has like 14 trillion of economy, and China has just 3 or 4 trillions of economy. How fast China can grow and how fast US should show that they would come in an equal parity terms. And second thing is that even for global and other things, security interests, US has already made all the bases and whatever weapons and infrastructures it needs. But China is still to do that. I don't know how much trillion of economy that would need.
The topic of China's growing military power was mentioned, and we've been reading how they're building their military and building their sea power. And you mentioned about peaceful nuclear investment and suggested that Japan should get more involved in peaceful investment in India. But it wasn't clear to me in your explanation. I didn't understand something you were explaining, that there is some problem with Japan investing, or it wasn't clear.
I think
something about.
Oh, I'm very sorry that you could not get the things. I was talking about that. It's not. There is no problem. Problem is in that since Japan does not want to have. Japan follows a very peaceful policy that neither will have nuclear, and nor it wants other powers to have nuclear capacity. So
military capacity.
Military capacity, weapons capacity, those sort of things. So Japan's concern is that obviously if it signs some sort of nuclear capability with India or other countries, then obviously it's like a transfer of weapons, nuclear weapons technology and other things.
But India is already a nuclear power. They already have weapons, so they don't really need Japan for that aspect.
That's
but
what.
So
that
your suggestion is for peaceful.
Yeah.
And what is preventing that?
Yeah.
Is there some discussion of Japanese
nuclear
infrastructure?
There discussion going on between India and Japan to sign some sort of nuclear civil deal.
So Japanese nuclear infrastructure companies and government would help invest in peaceful nuclear power in India? Is that the discussion that is happening?
They may. I'm just saying that there is a huge business potential in the nuclear power sector in India. Since India has signed that cooperation with many of the countries, even if Japan does not sign with India, obviously it's going to lose the business opportunities. Second thing, India loses on the point that since Japan has very advanced technology in the nuclear things, and if Japan does not sign with India the nuclear treaty, then obviously India loses on that account because it cannot get the high technology which Japan has.
Lower level nuclear technology. And so India is very keen to develop its nuclear power industry. They're positive on that, as opposed, for example, in America, very difficult to expand nuclear power in America now.
I
but
think
India is
if you compare
positive.
by India and US, then it's so huge gap. I think it's not a comparison of the equals, because obviously nuclear capacity US is so high and it has already developed so many nuclear. If you see the total installed capacity in US, a total installed capacity in India.
But it's essentially frozen in America.
That's right. Now. Obviously, once you reach a level, you have to freeze. But India has not reached that level. India has just begun.
And they want to expand that.
Obviously, and since its economy is growing, its population is growing, India needs the investment in power sectors. And nuclear gives nuclear is a major sector in that regard.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you for your lecture, and sorry for my delay. And a little bit different keywords. I'm a member of the agriculture team, which is giving a proposal for after you. What is the self-sufficient rate in India? Can India support its growing population with enough food?
To be very frank enough, from agriculture perspective, I know very little, but I think India has self-sufficiency in food production, at least in some like rice, wheat, and those sort of things. At least basic grains, it has food sufficiency.
Because I think the nations needs energy and food, right, to support its population. So it would be nice to think or include these keywords for your lectures next time.
Yeah, this time I have not.
No.
But still, India, to some extent, it's self-sufficient in food production, in many of the aspects.
Someone else? Go ahead.
Thank you for your presentation. So I'm in the U.S. company, and at the U.S. company, there are a lot of Indian alumni graduates in university in the U.S., and they are making important efforts to export technology and knowledge, export from United States to India or from United States to China or anything. So so you graduate from a Japanese university, and from your perspective, what do you think about the role of Indian alumni from graduates from Japanese universities for mutual relations between Japan and India? You think?
That would be great if that happens, and there has been some sort of exchanges and those sort of things, because we have some sort of Mombosho Scholars Association in India and those sort of things, which are organizing like bilateral relations, and if something happens on that regard, and they're giving the feedbacks and other.
Accepting what you said is correct, but still there's some kind of problem, as he mentioned, about the relationship with between the two countries. The U.S. has advantage in terms of the people. The many Indian people, students went to the United States and then came back. So the human relation is very strong. And also, as the Professor Natori said, the young graduate or young student try to study with focusing on Chinese relationship. But relationship in terms of the human relationship between Japan and India is very limited. And even if we need to, Japan and India should cooperate, there is no human resource base. So how to solve, or what kind of the trouble we are expecting in the next one generation, 30 years? So that is a general question.
I think it's like, since I said that since Japanese Japanese universities or Japanese companies have not taken other countries into account in that regard, that's why that skill has not been developed. Since US, as you said, that US has developed, because it was from the very long, that's a US policy, that you should have good relations with the other countries, and they develop the human resources, and then they go on supporting it in some form or the other. That's why it always has some sort of relationship, and that's how the relationship between the two continues. China has recently started doing that. With its economic growth, China is doing the same way, because it started investing in academic institutions and those sort of things, and business opportunities, and so because of that, people have started learning Mandarin. But the problem with Japan is that Japan has not done that till now, because obviously going by the trade volumes and other things, Japan has not done that. So obviously there would be it will take time, because obviously as your investments increase and other things increase, as the relationship between the two grows stronger, obviously obviously it's a like demand and supply thing, because when there would be demand, there would be supply. There are enough people in India to explore for new opportunities in different sectors. Obviously, if Japanese would become a major attractive sector, they would go to learn Japanese. Or for that sake, if for Japanese, if it's English, which becomes imminent in the long run, obviously they will go to learn English.
Questions raise problems for the Japanese government and Japan. It's a language policy in the future. I think Japan should may have to rethink its language policy, not in terms of U.S.-Japan relations, but also in inviting better human resources from developing countries, including India. I think so long as Japan does not develop much bilingual or multilingual policies, it will be less competitive in the future to attract human resources. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks for your presentation, first of all. I have a question regarding what you said about investing in the security sector. From what I hear, it seems like, well, this course is grand design of Japan. So in Japan's standpoint, don't you think that, by being so active in the security, like military sector, wouldn't it be a trade-off, like, for relations between Japan and China? I mean, like, it's not really the political, relations with Japan and China is not very great at the moment. Don't you think that by, investing in military in India, wouldn't it worsen the situation? That would be a trade-off for Japan. So I don't know, do you have any opinion on that issue?
Yeah, I think that's what in the security sector, maybe if Japan can invest in military-related technologies in India, that would be much better for India, because obviously, as Professor I was telling about Professor Muranishi project, that we should contain China by building bases in East and Central Asian region. But if you see India's location at present, India cannot have access to Central Asia region. Then how you are going to build bases? Because obviously you need to have some sort of connectivity with the region to build bases. And for that we need technologies. And obviously that technology can come from Japan, because if Japan has those technology, I'm not sure about that, but if it has, obviously compared to India, Japan has very high technology. And since when China can make at such a high on Himalaya and that Urumqi Karakoram highway and those sort of things connecting Urumqi and Islamabad and the project, obviously if there is a need, then India should directly build cut from the Hindu Kush mountain to some extent and directly enter into Central Asia, because that's a major resource for uranium, iron, gas, oil and those sort of things. And that too, in order to contain China, that region would be important. That's where technology, military technology would be a major important for India, and that would give Japanese business a major opportunities to invest in India. But the problem, obviously, I said that since Japan has a ban on export of military and other related technologies since 1976, till it does not change that, it will be difficult for Japan. Obviously, it needs to come up.
I think not only the Indians, but also the Chinese are very smart people. So I think that the Chinese, even if India and Japan cooperate against China, I think China, for that kind of situation, is for the Chinese not unexpected thing. I mean, they also already foresee what is going to come in the future. So it's the kind of game that we're playing, and it's not nothing unexpected. Go ahead.
Thank you. I wonder if you have, if you know the some proverb, Indian never tell a lie. Many Japanese people, since I was a kid, sometimes we hear that kind of proverb. Indian people never tell a lie. And then, is this true, or sometimes you use that kind of proverb for business field? Seriously. You never heard of the this kind of proverb?
It's It's very difficult to answer.
I've been in Japan a long time. I never heard that that proverb, but I will say something from a business perspective. In my company, we do a lot of our production in China, and in recent years, we've been hedging and risk management and moving production to other countries, to Vietnam, Indonesia, and some other countries. Still, the vast majority of our production is in China, but within our company, it's really a well-known situation that when we're working with all of the Chinese vendors that we work with, we always have to have very strict check policies in place for everything that gets done, because we have come to realize that when they just saying they are going to do something never guarantees that it will get done. And we don't have that experience in the other countries that we work with. Obviously, there are occasionally always problems, but we find that if they are not very strictly managed and closely watched, there's a high risk that what they say will get done doesn't get done. And I think that it's that is a matter of culture within the Chinese people. Perhaps they feel like part of business is getting away with what you can get away with, and they don't feel that there's anything wrong with that. So, and I don't know that that is all Chinese people, but it is definitely something that we deal with on a daily basis working with them. And we don't deal directly production in China, in India, so I can't compare to them. We do sell in India and do some sales there. But putting on to his point, perhaps the Japanese have a perception of Indians being very honest people. I haven't done a lot of business, so I can't compare with India. But I can say that in China, our perception is that you do have to watch them like a hawk. And I don't say on a personal level. Chinese people that I know personally, I find them to be honest directly with me personally, my friends that are Chinese. But in the business aspect, we do find that they have a culture that you have to have checks to make sure that things get done. I don't know anybody else has any comment on that.
I think that's a problem with India too. I won't deny that, because even in the corruption index list, India would figure very low on the list, maybe towards the end 20 or something like that. So that's why, obviously. And second thing, bureaucratic procedures in India, that takes lots of time. Those problems are there. Those procedure bottlenecks, I think I have written it in my paper even, that procedure bottlenecks are there. Corruption is a major issue in India, and those sort of things, and like bribery and those sort of things goes on. But still, in India, at least one thing is good, that one thing is sure that if you have given a bribe, your work would be done. To be very frank enough, in my whole life, I have never got things done without paying a bribe or some sort of thing. Or it doesn't, or it would not get done. They will simply go on meeting them, they will just say, yes, I'll do it. Not do it, I will not do it. So it's better in the first case itself, if you know whom to give or how to give, then they just do the things. But that's a culture thing, and I won't say culture thing, that's, I think, systemic failure. I won't say that all Indians are dishonest, that I don't prescribe to, but obviously that's problem is there, that I don't deny. Maybe system has come to such an end that obviously they would ask for money from each and everybody, then nobody can do anything, because common people live in the same way over there. If you go by the scams which have been coming out in the last 1 year or so in the India, you'll be aghast how people have been coping for so long years with these things, but still that's there. And since the very fact that those scams are coming out, that shows that there are honest people in India. But obviously one thing is maybe good for, obviously that would be mostly good for big businesses, but if they can align themselves with some big interests in India, that would serve their purpose, because then they would not have to go through all those procedural bottlenecks, because they are already in the system, and they will not have to go through all these corrupt means and those sort of things. They may not have to, because that's the only way out. I cannot foresee anything that India would change in a day, but obviously it provides the economic opportunity.
Well, I think we are getting into a very sensitive issue, whether or not a person of a specific country is trustworthy or not. I think Chinese people, for example, I have a lot of good friends in China, and everybody is so trustworthy. And I know a lot of people in Japan whom I could not trust. But it's not the big issue, because every nation has, I think, almost the same kind of distribution of good people to bad people. But when we talk about the difference between China and India in terms of a business relationship or political relationship, I think we should first think about what kind of legal philosophy or concept each country is based on. Like India and Japan, I think, I'm not in that area, but I think we have the very common basis. That is, all our personal principle or institutional principle is based on British common law. But China, they have a totally different legal concept, right? So the not Chinese people, but the common sense of China is not common sense of ours. And we could not blame each other, but we should take it as reality. So in that respect, I think Japan and India, whether or not any one particular person hates his acquaintance in India, it is not the matter. But from the point of view of a country, I think Japan and India has much more common principles together. And China, in that respect, is very, very difficult. And also that you started your lecture from Chinese increasing assertiveness. And I think many countries have kind of started feeling a threat from China, especially in Japan. Many people used to be like China, but I have dealt with a lot of Chinese students. I have been teaching here, and I'm still teaching in the university. And there are a lot of Chinese students. I'm a student from China. Even among Chinese students, they say, that guy we could never trust, because that guy is from totally different tribe. Okay? And I think in China, I think there are about 56 different tribes, right? So even among Chinese people, they consider some group of people they could never trust. They could trust Indian people more or Chinese people more, and so on. And therefore that we have to, whatever the issues we would pursue or discuss, I think we together start thinking very seriously about national security first. And I think many people who love China in Japan, okay? I mean many Japanese people who love China in Japan, I think should have woken up last year, because of a lot of incidents happened. And even those people who still love China should have started thinking that we should first start thinking very seriously about national security. Because anything, even we have a business contract, Chinese institution, not individual people, but the Chinese concept is that it is always could be neglected if they have a very strong principle of their own. And that applies to national security. So what I wanted to say is that before we talk about, while we are talking about business pros and cons or economic pros and cons between comparing the relationship between Japan, India, or Japan, China, or India, China, I think we, as you suggested at the end of your lecture, I think we should put the first priority on what type of national security both countries, that is India and Japan, would have in common. And in Japan, from my point of view, Japan could never declare that we are independent when we think about national security. U.S.-Japan Security Pact is the basis of everything. And I think it applies to most of the countries in Asia, even including India. And when we talk about national security of Asian countries, we should, at the same time, or as a basis of our national security of Asian countries, we should never forget about that. There should be the basis, that is the security pact between specific country and U.S. Otherwise, like we have experienced through the last several months, nothing could be very secure. So from that point of view, I think first, big countries in Asia, that is India, Japan, and probably we would invite Indonesia, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. And we should very seriously talk about how we could assure the national security of this entire region, taking into consideration the Chinese assertiveness of especially last several months. So it's a very good thing for us to analyze pros and cons in terms of economics, but at the same time, or as infrastructure of the environment, we could discuss about the economy. I think we should always think about security of this particular region. So I don't know whether or not I made it clear.
Okay, Sensei, I think I completely agree with you, because relations between any two countries, as they may say, obviously some vested interest would always be there, who would always put economic first, because obviously those who are making profits, they would not like to lose their profits. But going by the overall security interest of a country, it's not in any country's interest to just subdue its economic interest to the security interest, because obviously next day that country can be taken over by the other country. That's become so difficult. So obviously in the long run, it's always prudent to have some sort of like security before than the economics. But obviously you can, within a country, economics is given priority just because of the fact that economic ensures you that you can build upon your security. But going for the bilateral or regional or other between countries transnational character, so I think it should be the security which should be given the more weight than the economy. And but I only differ you on one point. You said that India depends upon US for its security interest. I completely deny that, because obviously India has some sort of, India would like to have some sort of security things with the US, and obviously it thinks that if US would help, then it would be easier for India. But time and again, India has done whatever it has done for its security on its own. Never it has taken anything from US, or the US has never helped out in India. Be it 1971, be it Kargil War 1999, whatever you name it. We have been dealing with Pakistan for so long, we never asked the US. US, when it came to Afghanistan, it wanted India.
Yeah, you're right. I think I was wrong in terms of talking about the security. Security in this particular region, and the India also depends upon the peace of Pacific region as well. And in that respect, I wanted to say that
obviously, that I am
the
even saying that
existence-
Indian Ocean and East Asian region, since they are linked, and obviously these security interests of all the countries coincide. And that too with the growing assertive China, most of the countries of the region have felt threatened. Be it Myanmar even. Obviously China has good relations with Myanmar, but I don't think that Myanmaris feel the same way of China because I heard from one of my friends who had some sort of investments in Myanmar, some Chinese guy, and he said that we are having troubles with Myanmaris in dealing with the day-to-day life because they are creating some sort of problems for my company. What should I do? I said, don't worry, you just remain in that company for some sort of time because obviously government would sort it out because it's not in government's interest to antagonize Chinese government. Obviously they will try to protect China's interest, but on the common people's level, so obviously they were antagonized. Maybe tomorrow if the system changes over there, people may have different thinking. So I think most of the countries of the region have some sort of maybe in Pakistan, if some sort of democratic government, really democratic government comes tomorrow, maybe they would not like to have Chinese interference in each and everything. So obviously those sort of scenario are hardly foreseen, but obviously we cannot make our security interest based on that. Obviously we need to build some sort of common ground so that obviously even in the long run, whether some countries go this way or the other, it will always be like good for the other countries. Most of the
I have just one question. Since the visit of President Obama last year to India, I feel that U.S.-India relationship is at least among the best in the history.
I think so.
Right,
I think
now.
so.
Do you think it is?
I think so, sir. Because I think most of the people because obviously most of the people in India in the beginning when Obama went back, so they said, okay, no deals, no not much things.
Yeah.
Just it wanted some sort of for its own people, some sort of economic things. So that's why it has just they just signed some sort of 10 billion deals or something like that. That would give out employment opportunities to US people in the US. Why should India does not gain anything, just it gets a pat on the back. But if you go into the reality of the things, you'll see that most of the time, because US has lifted most of the ban on high technology transfer and those sort of things, all the dual use technologies. So that gives a major boost to India in the long run. Obviously, it's not for a day. Obviously, on the face, it may not look very grand, but obviously in the long run it will be much fruitful, because as I think like in 1991 Manmohan Singh did not do anything, but it liberalized the Indian economy. You are seeing the fruits now. I think the same would happen because of this Obama visit. Maybe after 10 or 20 years down the line, people will start realizing what they had done, because what was the visit. I think this was a very significant visit, and obviously that shows a very high point of India-US relationship.
Okay, thank you. And can I have one comment? I think there are a lot of business-related people here. Most of the people, audience, are business-related people, right? No? Is it? I suppose. Okay. And I think the many Japanese people, business people, have had a very naive idea. Okay, like when I came to start teaching at Keio Business School, I think it was 1983. Those days, everybody wanted to go to China. Okay, and ever since, I said, you should take into consideration India, because of the same reason as I mentioned before. That is, the legal system is totally different in China. But in India, we share the same legal philosophy. Okay. But nobody listened to. But now I think the business people should have waken up that it's too naive to make any decision based on only economic, like attractiveness of market, attractive law. It's not law anymore, but labor costs and so on and so on. So I think, and I have been sitting on the board of directors of a couple of companies, and I have been last 2 decades suggesting strongly they should move the sites from China to Vietnam and other countries in Asia. But yet those people are not the majority in the businesses. Still they think, they say that, well, still China looks very attractive. But they are very short. I mean, if any people here would still say that, you are very short-sighted. And so I think you should reconsider your concept of, I mean, very much of, I would say, the bias that the China is, by definition, very attractive place for businesses. So that's my last comment, and that's all. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Sensei. I think I completely agree with your view, but obviously, I said because it's very myopic only in the sense that people are making profit and they would not like to lose their profits. And that goes for whatever, and they will try to justify it. And when the money is in very high terms, so obviously they would always justify that. Because they would not, because whatever may happen after 20 years or 25 years, they don't care about now. But obviously that would be very myopic. If you take from a long-term perspective, it's not very prudent.
Okay, it is, okay, one question.
I would like to ask about personal theory. Just thinking about the attractiveness starting from 20 years ago, 30 years ago between China and India. Perhaps it is, as I guess professor, I can't see your name, but
Professor.
The professor said about the political and government structures are very important, and you have to look at those honestly, because China has had a very strong command economy for a long time. They have been able to institute policies that made it very attractive and made very direct routes for foreign investment to come in to China, and that was very instrumental in causing a lot of investment to come there. 20, 30 years ago, I think everybody looked at those two markets and said they're huge, they're going to get bigger and become important in the future, but because of the policies that China was able to do, partly as a result of them not being a democratic country, but being able to just lay down the law and say this is the way it's going to be, they were able to make it attractive and easy for companies to come in. Now, India, being a democratic country and not being able to probably by fiat say this is the way it's going to be, this is it, take it or leave it, there has to be consensus among the people, more difficult for them to create that very easy, attractive route for companies to come in and investment to come in. So that has perhaps been a competitive advantage. On the other hand, you cannot deny the professor's point that in the long run, it may be more difficult to get into India, but when you're in there, you're going to have a legal structure which you can understand and can rely on to build a basis for maybe a stronger long-term and more secure business environment in the long run. But I think we have to be honest and say China's essential communist dictatorship has allowed them to create that, make it easier. And naive is perhaps not the word, but the correct word, in my opinion. I think it was more a matter of practicality. It was practical and possible to make a deal and say we'll buy 50% of this company, take a 50% joint venture because the Chinese government said you can do it. But in India, there was no government doing that. So although some people maybe are naive, The business people maybe were not going in for naive reasons, but for practical reasons.
I think to some extent you are right, because comparing India with China, obviously, because in my PhD doctor thesis even I wrote about that it's better to have a semi-authoritarian sort of system rather than a complete democratic country like India. Because obviously in a semi-authoritarian system like Singapore, you see that you can get the things done. In India, that becomes very difficult to operate. But China, as you were arguing about that, it's being an authoritarian country, it has able to perform, because whatever it wanted, it has delivered. In India, that's becomes so difficult, because obviously in India that becomes difficult, but only in the short term. In the long term, it never remains difficult, because I think at least in economic terms, it's a chain which never falls down. Once you have chain has started, that would build upon. That even China would like to control its growth, it cannot do that, because obviously its whole government and other things would have to fall for that. So that they would never like. But again, see the problem with the authoritarian countries, like they stopped the export of rare earth materials to Japan. Just very one instance recently. In India, that could not have been unthinkable. So obviously, there are pros and cons on both the sides. And it's not that the business people are naive or some people are, I think it's not the question. Obviously, business people would be more interested for their own profits. Obviously, it's not practicality. I would not say business people are more practical. I would never say that. But obviously, since day-to-day life, their main interest is to earn the profits, and they are doing that. And wherever they will get it, as a businessman, I have been put into some place, and if I had to do business, obviously, I'll put my money into China, if that would have provided me a better destination. But as a sensible person, obviously China may in the long run provide, always I'll put some money in other countries even. So it's like a balancing the things. It's not that it's not much difference between academics or the complete business thing. I think it's somewhere it's
okay. We want to talk more, but we don't have much time. So I think we can talk between the sessions. And thank you very much, Vikash. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. He came all over from India, and he stayed this building for 2 weeks, and for this presentation and joint work with Professor Manush's team. And we are expecting the valuable insight in the final report with him, from his report and his project teams. So I appreciate and give the hands to him again. Okay.質問に関して日本語あるいは意見で日本語というのでも良いかなと思ったんですけども、皆さん英語が達者でなかなか時間が足りなかったですね。国際会議ではインドの方の話をストップするのがなかなか難しいということがよく言われてますけども、今日そう言われてましたけど、今日は逆で日本人の話をストップさせるのが大変に難しいという場面もあったということで、これから将来ですね、中国インドというのは巨大な存在になっていくと。で30年後ぐらいには中国は世界の GDP の 30%、 それから日本が 2-3%、 それからインドが 20% という、なんか非常に皆さんここにおられる皆さんが生きてる間に世界の構図がガラッと変わるという中でポリティクスをどう考えるかということで、非常にプロボカティブでもありますし重要な問題ということで、ただ解決策がなかなかうまく日本にとってはなさそうだなという印象でしたけど、これはディスカッションを続けていこうということです。チームの方よろしくお願いいたします。ではちょっと時間が15分ほど遅れておりますけれども、45分まで休みを取りまして45分から再開いたします。次は日本語のセッションで農業ということですのでご準備いただきます。ではよろしくお願いします。